Gildan Media, a division of Recorded Books, presents Real Women, Real Leaders, Surviving and Succeeding in the Business World. Edited by Kathleen Hurley and Priscilla Shumway. Narrated by Abby Craden. Publisher's note. This audiobook has bonus material. Please contact whomever you purchase this audiobook from to request the material. Forward. I've generally steered away from books telling people how to do things that are mostly common sense, and books on leadership are no exception. Although just about every parent wants his or her children to be leaders, a parent could teach them to be Olympic athletes more easily. There is no recipe for leadership. No book that tells you what you need to do to teach it or to be one. No school or apprenticeship that will give you the credential. I've also avoided saying that women would be better leaders than men, because that generalization is unprovable. Women are as varied as men, their talents and behavior determined by their genes, their upbringing, their education, their environment, their hard work. But what I can say is that men have had a lot more opportunities to lead than women, especially in business and in government. So there is some work to be done. I was lucky enough to get the chance to lead at two wonderful organizations, The Economist magazine and Pearson plc, for a total of 22 years. I found in that time that the very best way to learn to lead is to meet leaders or read stories of their exploits. That is precisely what the authors of Real Women, Real Leaders have set out to offer us, and I hope you'll think they've succeeded. If you know real stories, first-hand or second-hand, I predict that they'll leave you with what you really need, a few important personal mantras, and a framework for how to make your decisions. The simple mantras I carried around helped me enormously, although they were sparse. Be brave. Be imaginative. Be decent. We adopted those goals for Pearson, and I thought they were pretty good guides for what a leader should be as well. I was especially enamored with the word decent, because it seemed to me that in business, leaders sometimes thought that they had to be tough. To them, that meant that decisions had to be communicated without sympathy or compassion to be clear, and it meant that the company's role was not to help people get on in their lives. My framework for how to make decisions was equally simple. Be yourself. Use your own voice. Communicate. If you are uncertain, err on the side of generosity. Strip everything down to its simplest elements. These were common sense. Very common sense. But they served me well. Women in work may be heartened or instructed by the stories in this book, but so also may girls from adolescence to college, all preparing to run the world, or some corner of it too. And I hope that men, especially those who are in positions heading toward leadership, will gain some enlightenment as well. Let's not kid ourselves. It's important for women to help women, but it's also important for men to help women, and, when needed, women to help men. I have a wonderful friend who has made a great impact on the world she has lived in, and she attributes it all to Eleanor Roosevelt. In 1957, Mrs. Roosevelt was the commencement speaker at my friend's college, Sarah Lawrence. She made an inspirational speech. But what the girls remembered most was that at the end, Mrs. Roosevelt stuck her fist in the air and exhorted them loudly and boldly, "Women, go forth with courage." My friend said this shaped her life, her confidence, her sense of herself, the way she acted from then on. She's never forgotten it, and I've never forgotten the telling of it. Courage, if you have nothing else, is enough to guide your way. But in this book, I think you'll find many stories that may stir you, and I hope they will be the making of your leadership, probably a new kind of leadership. Dame Marjorie Morris Scardino served as Chief Executive Officer and as a member of the Board of Directors for Pearson plc, a publishing and education company from 1997 to 2012. From 1985 to 1997, Ms. Scardino served in several roles at The Economist Group, a media company, including as Chief Executive Officer. Ms. Scardino served on the board of directors of Nokia Corporation, a telecommunications company, from 2001 to April 2013. Ms. Scardino holds a BA in psychology from Baylor University and a JD from the University of San Francisco School of Law. In December 2013, she joined the board of Twitter as its first female director. Preface. Real Women, Real Leaders is a compilation of stories from some of the most successful women working today. We have identified women who are known to be transformational, exemplary leaders in their industries, everything spanning from business to politics, education to the arts. We have taken the opportunity to look at their stories, in their own words, and see how they have been able to find success across a wide range of industries in which women have traditionally been either excluded from or disempowered within. Through their eyes, we see stories of inspiration and strength, and we want to make sure that every woman listening has access to the role models and strategies that these women present. To this end, we have framed the book around the pivotal work of two extraordinary researchers, Dr. Jack Zenger and Dr. Joseph Folkman. A full research article is included at the end of this book. Zenger and Folkman believe that a strengths-based leadership development model is the most effective way for businesses to amplify their organizational impact. Through this research, they defined 16 key competencies that are crucial characteristics for inspirational leadership. On 12 of 16 competencies, females were rated more positively by the total of all respondents: manager, peers, direct reports, and others. A Study in Leadership, Women Do It Better Than Men, Harvard Business Review. As the data began to roll in, Zenger and Folkman started to notice a number of interesting trends that appeared along the lines of gender. They quickly decided to include additional facets to their research and began to analyze data that suggested that there were differences between men and women's leadership styles, and that women seemed to be surpassing the men. Jack Zenger, CEO and co-founder of Zenger Folkman, stated, "It is a well-known fact that women are underrepresented at senior levels of management, yet the data suggests that by adding more women, the overall effectiveness of the leadership team would go up." Using this research as a catalyst to help organize these women's key strengths, the book Real Women, Real Leaders is able to balance between the worlds of academia and reality, showcasing real narrative with real data. We chose to group and organize the real women based on their professional industry, in the hopes that those reading would be able to draw connections between their own professional trajectories and those of our real women. We went even further, and each real woman has highlighted the competencies that she excels in order to gain a working knowledge of each woman's incredible success. Each chapter begins with a brief introductory section that includes a description of the top competencies that our real women have coalesced around, as defined by Zenger and Folkman. Next, each introductory section includes current-day actionable research and strategies on ways to develop each of these leadership competencies in the workplace. Each chapter then includes the personal narratives of a number of real women. It is our hope that, in addition to inspiration, each chapter will provide every listener with ideas, opportunities, and strategies to develop her personal leadership style. The appendices of the book, which can be found in the bonus PDF of this audiobook, also include a host of information, including research and a personal leadership assessment, to further aid our listeners in their personal growth and development. Women are making changes and inspiring the world daily through their leadership. We believe that women everywhere can become the best possible versions of themselves and help make positive change in the world. This is our attempt to highlight but a few of those pioneers. Thank you for listening. So much of what it takes to be a leader has been historically defined by men. And while I was determined to be a leader, the last thing in the world I was going to do was to try to be like a man so that I could be taken seriously. I had to continue to be myself and create a leadership style that worked for me. I'm just not capable of being anyone other than who I am. Libby Sartain, Yahoo Inc. A note from Kathleen Hurley. In the future, there will be no female leaders. There will just be leaders. Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. Sheryl Sandberg's quote from her recent book provides the answer to the question of why we chose to publish this book. Having been in the education industry for far longer than I care to admit, more than 40 years, my own life has been a journey on a path to leadership and mentorship. My career began back in 1967 as a special education teacher. I spent 5 years in the classroom before moving to the private side of the industry, to the publishing world. While most women dominated the teaching side of the education industry, it became clear, fairly quickly, that leadership in the publishing world was dominated by men. While there were many women in publishing, most were support roles and not leading divisions or making critical decisions. In a nutshell, at that time, we were the worker bees. However, having been an educator, I found that knowing the language of the education world, a language that enabled me to relate to and converse with everyone, from a classroom teacher to a curriculum director to a large school district superintendent, gave me a unique perspective and set me apart from many of my male counterparts. Additionally, I learned that the skills I had been taught to lead a classroom full of students translated quite well to the private sector side of the industry, and ultimately prepared me for leadership roles. I should also add here that I am oldest of 4 children, and was raised by 2 strong-willed and very determined parents. While some people may assume that the firstborn child is a natural leader, I tend to agree with the Vince Lombardi quote that leaders aren't born, they are made. While my parents each had his or her own approach to parenting, they both encouraged and nurtured leadership qualities in me. They encouraged me to be an independent risk-taker, and they supported my decision to leave the classroom, which was an encouraged, safe profession for many young women in the 1960s, to join the private side of the education world. You will find that this theme runs through the stories shared in this book. All of these women shared that they had adult figures early in their lives who instilled confidence in them and encouraged them to pursue their ambitions. I have joked that over the last 40 years, so many of the companies I've worked for have been bought and sold that I've lost count. However, with each acquisition, transition, or change, I also found myself moving a little higher up the scale to a position of more influence in the industry. Yet I could not have moved up had it not been for individual leaders taking an interest in me. In my early years, I sought out those leaders, those mentors who had something to teach me. I observed them, listened to them, and did my best to emulate their successful qualities when the opportunities would present themselves. One of the most important things I learned from the many mentors I had is that people matter, networking matters, and that half of the battle is just showing up. I also learned that doing what you say you're going to do goes much further than being the person in the room with the best idea or the loudest voice. Over the years, I came to realize that the leadership qualities that I had developed were a direct result of the mentors who had taken time to teach me the industry and to teach me the habits of a successful leader. I also came to realize that, in particular, many young women in our industry needed more women mentors to demonstrate quality leadership skills and help groom them to be leaders in the industry. In the private side of the education industry, the world of print publishing dominated in the 1970s, but the 1980s ushered in the new world of software development, and what we in the industry call ed tech. Being ever ready to tackle new challenges, I jumped to the world of ed tech in the 1980s and worked as an executive at companies like IBM, Skillsbank, Grolier, and Mindscape before landing at the Learning Company. As an executive at those companies, I was also recruited to serve on the board of directors for industry associations and education nonprofits. During that time, more and more women were entering ed tech, and by nature, as women, we began networking with each other, seeking each other out at education conferences and collaborating as industry partners when possible. We also actively started mentoring each other and purposefully recommending our peers for executive leadership positions. Seeing a real need for this type of ongoing networking, a small group of us, led by Ellen Bialo, a true pioneer for women in the ed tech space, started an unofficial industry club in the 1990s called the Dolls, Dirty Old Ladies of Software. We would put together networking dinners at conferences, but the catch was you were encouraged to bring a younger woman from your organization or from the industry with you so that she could meet industry colleagues and begin to build those connections and provide opportunities for veteran women of the industry to serve as mentors to the newcomers. What started out as dinners of 20 to 30 women at these education industry events now easily tops 500 women, with 100 or so attending at least one of the 4 or 5 dinners we host over the course of a year, all over the country. In addition, in the 1990s, Deb DeVries, who was then an executive at MECC, Pat Walkington, who was then an executive at the Learning Company, and I at Skillsbank, started a national awards program called Making It Happen. Making It Happen began as a way to recognize women who were leading the way to integrate technology into education, into classrooms around the country. More than 500 women have been recognized, and ultimately, we did find a few good men along the way who received recognition for their efforts as well. Making It Happen has been such a success that it is now an awards program run by the largest education technology association in the world, the International Society for Technology in Education, ISTE. Women recognizing other women is important, and these are just a couple of examples of how, by working together, we can help and encourage one another. Today, the education industry has many more women in leadership roles. A couple of years ago, Marjorie Scardino stepped down after 15 years as the CEO of Pearson plc. In full disclosure, I worked for Pearson for 10 years. Marjorie was an exceptional leader in her 15 years at Pearson. Until she was appointed CEO, Pearson had always been led by a man. During her tenure, she transformed the company from one of the big 3 educational print publishing companies to the largest education technology company in the world, providing educational services and products to ages pre-K through adult in more than 60 countries around the globe. During her time at Pearson, Marjorie always had one rule that she emphasized and would reference time and again. When presented with various options, as a company or as an individual, you should always, always err on the side of generosity. In other words, compassion from the top goes a long way to instill trust in others and make them want to follow you. Knowing my commitment to Pearson and my interest in leadership, Marjorie recommended me for the Advanced Leadership Initiative, ALI, at Harvard University, which concluded in November 2014. During my time at ALI, my sister-in-law, Priscilla Shumway, who is an executive trainer and coach, was reading a report that had been featured in the March edition of the 2012 Harvard Business Review. The results are in. Women are better leaders. The report was by Dr. Jack Zenger and Dr. Joe Folkman. They had identified 16 competencies that made an individual an outstanding leader. The results showed that women outscored men in 12 of the 16 competencies. Priscilla and I were pleasantly surprised, and wondered how many other women would be surprised by the findings. Better yet, we thought, wouldn't it be great to show how successful women use these competencies as leaders in their chosen career fields? It was also during my time at Harvard that I began researching my own way to provide a path to leadership and civic engagement for adolescent girls and young women around the world who traditionally do not have access to education and training. With the help of my good friend and business colleague, Deb DeVries, and 2 recent graduates of Harvard's Graduate School of Education, Cass Walker and Liz Teixeira, we founded Girls Thinking Global, GTG. Our mission is to create a global network of organizations that are serving girls and women to leverage resources to ensure that every possible dollar and resource is used to improve the quality of life for adolescent girls worldwide. To support our mission and to ensure that I am doing everything I can to create pathways to leadership for young women, I will be donating a portion of the proceeds from this book to Girls Thinking Global. In the end, in this book, we strive to share the stories of each contributor in a personal, meaningful way, in a way that will inspire girls and women to not only pursue their dreams, but also leverage the skills that they have to be leaders, influencers, and role models in their chosen professions. Priscilla and I personally know all the women in this book. They have diverse backgrounds and experiences and are excited to share their journeys to success. And, in the end, we hope the words of Sheryl Sandberg will ring true and that you will not view them as female leaders, but rather as leaders who model successful habits for everyone around them, male or female, to emulate. Chapter 1. Leadership Journey. Skill or Personal Mission. Priscilla Shumway. Leadership is simply having something left over after taking care of yourself to care for someone or something else. John Eartha, founder of Homestead. John Eartha died at the age of 82 after a life dedicated to education, theater, and leadership development for children and teens. He taught them to work hard with others to achieve a common goal and to expect great things from themselves. Most importantly, they learned to value and respect the differences between people and understand that everyone has a contribution to make if allowed to participate. Portland Press Herald, October 18, 2009. What wonderful lessons on leadership for children and teens, and what wonderful lessons for leadership in the world of work. Leaders can be found in all walks of life, of all ages, races, creeds, and nations. Leadership demands much from us. Despite our motivations to lead, the challenges we face, or the various opportunities presented to us. As Carolyn Warner points out in her book, Words of Extraordinary Women, the Japanese word for teacher is sensei, which means far more than just someone who instructs. The literal meaning of the word is honored leader. A sensei is a guide, a mentor, giver and sharer not just of information, but of knowledge. And when I think of the greatest leaders that I know or have studied, they combine all of these qualities. In Real Women, Real Leaders, our authors share stories about their mentors and guides, the various sensei in their lives, and how they have been impacted. In exploring those who have impacted them, they also share how they themselves have now taken on this role for others in their lives. The essays in this book show how these diverse authors view leadership and their personal journeys to becoming leaders. Their stories point out that leadership is not just a skill to be mastered, but also a mission, a value, a way to live. For many of our authors, their earliest mentors or guides were their mothers, fathers, or grandmothers. Lessons learned in childhood supported them throughout life. In an article by Sorcher and Brandt from the Harvard Business Review on the hard wiring of leadership, they concluded, Our experience has led us to believe that much of leadership talent is hardwired in people before they reach their early or mid-20s. That means, as far as leadership is concerned, people are reasonably complete packages by the time they arrive at the corporate doorstep. Their ability to lead has already been shaped by a multitude of factors and experiences that took root early in their lives. Are you picking the right leaders? Melvin Sorcher and James Brandt, Harvard Business Review, February 2002. Sorcher and Brandt's conclusion holds true for the stories found in Real Women, as the authors share how early experiences in their lives built their leadership qualities and propelled them to success. My own personal journey to leadership also began as a young child. Presented with an opportunity, I was always willing to step up to the plate at school, Girl Scouts, or even planning a neighborhood talent show to raise money for charity. I loved the sense of control that leadership can bring, but the downside of that was that I often took it too far and alienated my friends. When 3 of my best friends in 4th grade formed an I Hate Priscilla Club, I was shocked, angry, and sad. I had not included them in the planning of our Girl Scout bicycle trip. But in 4th grade, those issues usually flame out quickly, and thankfully, they did, and within a week we were best friends again. Lessons learned. The art of humility coupled with the ability to include, inspire, and motivate others in tasks goes a long way toward persuading others to follow you. These are lessons I continue to teach myself every day. In fact, a 2012 Girl Scout study of 8 to 17-year-olds, 1/3 of the girls said they did not want to be leaders because they feared being disliked by their peers. The study goes on to state, leadership qualities girls would very much like to have as adults include standing up for their beliefs and values, 84%, trying to change the world for the better, 68%, bringing people together to get things done, 64%. These qualities correspond to the leadership competencies from the Zenger-Folkman study, displays high integrity and honesty, champions change, collaboration and teamwork. So why this book? Why now? When Kathy asked me to work with her on this book, I jumped at the chance. Kathy has been a leading mentor in my life. As a sister-in-law, full disclosure here, I am married to her only brother, we have worked together at various companies since 1991. She has supported me, pushed me, and exposed me to many professional opportunities. She has always believed in me and talked positively about me in front of others. Don't we all want praise, recognition, and encouragement? Do we do that enough for our coworkers, our children, our spouses? Kathy has definitely been instrumental in reminding me that giving credit where it's due is a strong, essential leadership quality. While women have made great strides in leadership, and many of those stories have been documented, the truth is that today women represent only 5% of chief executives in Fortune 1000 companies. Catalyst, November 7, 2014, Women CEOs of the Fortune 1000. Knowing the tremendous stories of women that we encounter every day, Kathy and I felt it was time to gather these stories together, stories of other women like us, who have been and still are on the journeys to leadership. And, as importantly, we wanted to include women who represent fields inside and outside of the corporate world, women who are impacting government, industry associations, nonprofits, sports, and, yes, the business world. So many books have been written about the topic of leadership, but Real Women, Real Leaders aims to tell a different story. In fact, 24 different stories all bound together by the leadership competencies as described in the 2012 research by Zenger and Folkman. The entire Zenger/Folkman research study, along with their 16 identified leadership competencies, can be found in the article included at the end of this book. More than 7,300 leaders were studied, and it was discovered that of the 16...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?